Who is Maite? I can tell you that this kind of event is not normal for me. So I'm putting aside those fears and leaving my comfort zone. So there's my LinkedIn QR code. You can reach me there through the code. If it's not working, just type in my name and my profile will come out. I'm a bilingual recruiter, Spanish bilingual recruiter. And, I've been in, like many recruiters, I started by mistake in the industry. And now I have over 12 years of recruiting. First, I was a college recruiter for universities in the US, and I represented them in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. So it was kind of cool because I was traveling all over Puerto Rico and over the Caribbean. Not a bad job. And then I had the opportunity to transition into the corporate world. And ever since, I've had opportunities and experiences in different industries and become an SSME in all those different industries that I've worked. So obviously, this gives you something about me that I'm not afraid of trying new things. You have there two quotes that I truly admire, and it's part of my recruiting philosophy. William Clement Stone's The Commandment of Success, do it now. As recruiters, we should do things like right away, right? Not just let it aside and wait until mañana, right? And then the other one is in Spanish, but it's no dejes para mañana lo que puedas hacer hoy. That's what it basically says. Don't live for tomorrow what you can do today. It's part of my mottos, basically. I'm going to be talking here to you about candidate experience. And it has really touched me in the last year. And closely, candidate experience and diversity. And diversity is not just because I am Hispanic, but there are so many more kind of like diversities. So I'm talking to you from candidate side and recruiter side. It's like a mix. Recruiters can be famous for recruiter ghosting, right? We have spoke already about that. Tamara spoke about it. Candidate experience with ghosting. And right now I can tell you, since I've been an actual candidate, it's been a while since I haven't been an actual candidate. In my most recent job, I can tell you that I was very busy and I will ghost my candidates for whatever reason. So I was one of those non-responders. And now that I am an actual candidate, time has allowed me to rethink things and put myself in their shoes. Ironically, I have always said that I like treating my candidates the way I would like to be treated. And I got lost on that with so much work. So let's make it better. Don't let busyness impact your engagement with candidates. And this is just in general. I'm a true believer of follow-up, as a candidate and as a recruiter. I know recruiters are very busy nowadays, but as a candidate, I can tell you, having been a recruiter as well, don't be afraid to follow up with your recruiter or with your hiring manager. So yes, go ahead and send that message, email, LinkedIn. There's so many ways that you can send a message to your recruiter or hiring managers and follow up with them. And then once we find a job, let's not forget about the candidates, right? Once we're in the saddle, meaning we got a job, we're working, we're recruiting again. Don't forget that you were once recently in a candidate's shoes and pay more attention and not forget to follow up. Communication is basically key. So this is a slide from Greenhouse. According to Greenhouse, it explains what some of the red flags in the recruiting process are. Take a closer look, and according to Greenhouse, the number one reason for red flags is lack of communication. I didn't make that up. That's according to Greenhouse. So there's no excuse for it. And the result, in many cases, can be that the candidate abandons the recruiting process. So it has a big impact. And I can tell you from my perspective as a candidate, after an interview, I usually like writing a thank you email, old school. I always do that to the hiring manager and to the recruiter. I send them a message, and I can tell you recently that 90% of the time, they don't reply. Amazing. And that for me, from the candidate standpoint, it is a red flag. So let's try and work on that communication and not ghosting our candidates. And here is another support from that study from Greenhouse. What I was saying, that the candidates abandon the recruiting process. In that survey, they say also that 50% of the candidates abandon the recruiting process. So it's a big impact. And 70% of the candidates believe lack of communication is the biggest red flag in the hiring process. So it's something that I think we have to really stress about it and think about it more when we are actually in the recruiter side of the process. And then this actually takes me to a different role: diversity, communication, and then lack of communication and the diversity. And diversity, race is just a type of diversity. And this can include a whole bunch of things in it. People with disabilities, including non-visible, gender, people of color, Hispanics, LGBTQIA, veterans, neurodivergent, indigenous people, you name it. It's hard enough to be Hispanic, and even more not living in the US, which is my case. I live in Puerto Rico directly. I don't live in the US. Being Puerto Rican, living in Puerto Rico is a whole different topic, believe it or not. With attaching my diversity with the candidate experience, some people still don't know that Puerto Rico is part of the US. And sometimes, even without them knowing, they just disqualify me because I don't have a US citizenship. Still nowadays, in 2024, believe it or not, it's still happening. Puerto Rico is a US territory, and we are Americans. The biggest difference is that we don't vote for president. But that's basically the biggest difference. Diversity. We can spend hours talking about diversity, but I will mostly concentrate here talking about Hispanic and having a non-visible disability. Anxiety is one of my non-visible disability, among others. And by the way, that's why communication with the recruiting team for me is so important. Even though I have learned to manage and canalize it, it's still there. From my experience, my recommendation is to be empathetic and avoid making assumptions about your colleagues and candidates. You never know what type of non-visible disabilities they may have. When I'm working with candidates, depending on what stage of the process we're at, I always like to explain the process as best as possible and constantly ask them and remind them that if they have a question, I make them feel comfortable to contact me directly. And always, and depending again in what type of the process we're in, I'll try to give them pinpointers as to their interview, depending with whom they're interviewing with, and try to get as much information from that other interviewer so I can help my candidates and give them suggestions. I don't want to send my candidates, regardless of experience, into failure. On the contrary, want to send them into success. It doesn't matter how much experience at the end of the day we have and how ready we are. At times, being nervous and not confident can send us into failure. I also encourage my candidates to take notes and have their questions written before the interview. For the same reason, you never know. And I actually do that myself when I'm going to an interview with an employer. Attaching again candidate experience with diversity. Being Hispanic gives me another perspective on candidate experience, like I mentioned. Funny, when I was putting up this presentation, I did a search and I put Hispanic candidate experience 2024. And since we are on an election year, that's everything I got. So I rethink, I put on my sourcing hat and I added the job word within the search. And this is what I got. They're about Latinos or Hispanics in the US, they are about 17%. And this is according to the 2020 census. So it might have changed a little bit. But what I was impressed was that according to recruitment marketing, Hispanics/Latinos rather go through a employee referral program when they are applying to companies because they have gone through a bad candidate experience going directly through the career site. And this person, Olivia Young, via recruitment marketing, she even actually recommends company creating a referral program because probably Latinos are not the only ones who are going through that. So imagine, and this is Latinos living in the US. I am a Latino, a Puerto Rican living in Puerto Rico, not in the US. That's a whole different story and a whole different topic. And we will go over 1 hour talking about it. But I just want to throw out there, if there are any TA leaders and fellow TA recruiters, colleagues that I have stuck on LinkedIn to get a connection with and send you a message, you should understand now why I use this practice so much. I got to get myself out there and explain and let you know what's the reality of us living over here. Many of us here today are here because we're unemployed, looking for new opportunities. And the reality is to network as well, right? And according to the US Labor Department, unemployment rate for Hispanic with disabilities, it's amazingly, it's one of the biggest. You got it there. It's not me just saying that, it's according to the US Labor Department. So I'm attaching this, with diversity and employee experience. Unemployment rate for Hispanic, it's 9.4. Hispanics and Black, it's one of the highest. So let's be part of the change. As recruiters, we have an opportunity to have a positive impact. As we say in Puerto Rico, a poner nuestro granito de arroz and make a change. Put ourselves out there and help people. Make a change. Let's continue learning, helping each other. This will sound cheesy, but by helping each other, we might change the process and make it better. In a nutshell, basically. If you want to be part of the change, explain the process to the candidate. Encourage questions. Don't make assumptions. And be empathetic. I am super empathetic with my candidates. I try to, be as in touch with them as possible. Keep the candidate informed along the process. And like I mentioned before, communication is essential. And it's in general, it's for us as recruiters and us as candidates right now. So communication is super, super, super important in my opinion. So if you didn't got my QR code at the beginning of the presentation, here's my QR code again. If you're representing an organization that is looking for a bilingual remote senior recruiter and wants to connect, let's do so. And if you're ever in Puerto Rico, please let me know. I love showing around my island.